My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid Lucas could hear it from across the room. I lay perfectly still in our king-sized bed, eyes barely open, forcing my breath to stay slow and steady like I was lost in deep sleep. But I wasn't. I knew exactly what was happening. The sweet routine he had given me every single night, a warm glass of milk with honey, wasn't love at all. It was poison. Through the crack of my lashes, I saw him crouch near the baseboard, sliding a thin blade into the wooden trim until a hidden panel popped loose. My blood froze as he pulled out a metal box and opened it with deliberate care. Inside were stacks of cash, multiple passports with his photo but different names, and photographs of women who were not me. Some looked like they had been taken from the shadows, without the women knowing. And then a page from a small notebook. Handover, Thursday, 6:40 a.m. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up and demand answers, but I couldn't, because the bitter aftertaste still lingered on my tongue. He had drugged my milk again. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss stories that expose the monsters hiding behind closed doors. 3 weeks before that terrifying night, if you had asked me to describe my life, I would have said it was ordinary, safe, predictable. I was Ava Bennett, a communications manager in Austin, Texas, constantly juggling deadlines, client presentations, and endless revisions. Stress was my constant companion, but I believe my home life was stable. I believed in Lucas Hale, my husband of 6 years, the man who told me I worked too hard and needed to slow down. Our evenings were always the same. At exactly 9 p.m., Lucas would bring me a warm glass of milk with honey, just the way I liked it. He said it helped me sleep, that I deserved comfort after long days at the office. I used to think it was sweet, a ritual that proved how thoughtful he was. I never imagined that glass of milk would become my undoing. At first, it was subtle. I'd drink the milk, curl up on the couch, and feel my eyelids grow heavy faster than usual. I chalked it up to exhaustion from work. But soon, the fatigue became unnatural. I wasn't just sleepy, I was gone. Entire nights passed like I'd been erased from the world. I'd wake up groggy, my mouth dry, my body heavy, and my mind foggy, as if I hadn't just slept but been sedated. It wasn't only the drowsiness. Things around the house began to shift in small, unsettling ways. My purse would be moved, my work files rearranged. Once, I found my laptop warm in the morning, even though I was certain I had shut it down the night before. "Maybe you're just stressed," Lucas would say whenever I mentioned it. He'd flash me that reassuring smile, the one that used to calm me. "You've been forgetting things lately. It's nothing." But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like my life was being quietly rearranged, piece by piece, while I was unconscious. I confided in Jenna Brooks, my best friend since college. We met for lunch at a cafe near my office, and as I picked at my salad, I finally admitted, "I think something's wrong. I've been sleeping too deeply, and things in my house aren't where I left them." Jenna frowned, her fork pausing mid-air. "Like what?" "My laptop, my purse, even my work badge." And it's only started happening since Lucas began insisting on making me milk every night. Her eyes widened. "Ava, that doesn't sound normal at all. What if he's—" She trailed off, not finishing the sentence. I laughed nervously. "You think he's drugging me? He's my husband. He's always taken care of me." But the look in Jenna's eyes unsettled me. She wasn't convinced, and if I was being honest with myself, neither was I. That night, I paid closer attention. I lifted the mug to my lips, let the milk touch my tongue, and there it was. A bitter taste, faint but unmistakable, lurking beneath the sweetness of honey. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just my imagination. When Lucas asked if something was wrong, I forced a smile. "No, it's fine, just hot." I pretended to drink while secretly letting the liquid slide back into the mug. For the first time, I noticed how closely he watched me. His eyes followed every movement, like he was waiting for me to finish. When I finally showed him the empty cup, his lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. "Good girl," he said softly. The words made my skin crawl. That night, I barely slept. Not because of the drug, because I refused to drink it. I lay awake, waiting, listening. Around midnight, I heard Lucas downstairs. His voice carried through the vents, low and sharp, nothing like the warm tone he used with me. I couldn't make out the words, but there was an accent in his voice that I had never heard before. The next morning, I told Jenna everything. Her expression hardened. "You need proof, Ava. If this is real, you can't just confront him. You need evidence." Her suggestion was simple but terrifying. Record myself at night, set up my phone, keep it charging, and capture whatever happened while I was under. That evening, my hands shook as I positioned my phone on the dresser, angled toward the bed. When Lucas handed me my warm milk, I drank just enough to taste that bitter tang, then faked the rest. He kissed my forehead, told me to sleep well, and left the room. I stayed awake as long as I could, watching the red recording light blink faintly across the room. Hours later, when I checked the footage, I saw the man I thought I loved hovering over me, testing my eyelids, smiling when I didn't stir, then rifling through my purse and laptop like a stranger. The life I thought I knew was unraveling, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend to be asleep. By the time that terrible night arrived, when I saw Lucas pull out the metal box from behind the baseboard, I was no longer the naive woman sipping warm milk without a second thought. I was already someone different, more cautious, more deliberate, and secretly preparing for a fight I never imagined I'd have to face. On the outside, though, my life looked picture perfect. I was thriving at work, having just secured a major contract for one of Austin's biggest tech firms. My colleagues praised my ability to keep calm under pressure. Clients trusted me to deliver campaigns on impossible deadlines. I had a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, and from the outside, I looked like a woman in complete control of her life. People would see me walking into the building in my tailored suits, smiling at the security guard, greeting the receptionist by name, and they would think, "She has it all." They didn't know that every night I returned to a house where the man waiting for me wasn't my partner, but my predator. Still, success gave me something important: resources and connections. It was because of my professional network that I knew where to turn when things started feeling wrong. Jenna, my best friend, wasn't just a confidant. She had contacts, people in law enforcement, people who knew how to dig into records that ordinary citizens couldn't touch. And then there was Detective Miles Rivera, calm, sharp-eyed, with a voice that carried quiet authority. When Jenna introduced me to him, I expected skepticism. Instead, he listened carefully. His brow furrowed as he examined the footage I had captured on my phone. "This isn't just paranoia," he said after a long silence. "This is a man preparing for something. And based on what I see, it's not just theft. It's escalation." Those words chilled me, but they also validated what I had been feeling all along. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. I was in danger, and I wasn't alone in fighting back. At the same time, my career success became my armor. While Lucas thought he had me under control, drugged and oblivious, I was using my professional skills to create cover stories. I scheduled late-night work meetings that allowed me to meet Jenna and Rivera. I used the excuse of preparing presentations to mask my digging into Lucas's past. I had learned to compartmentalize. By day, I was the rising star at the agency, presenting flawless marketing strategies and shaking hands with CEOs. By night, I was a woman quietly gathering evidence against her own husband, pretending to sleep while her phone camera recorded everything. In some strange way, the contrast kept me strong. My success reminded me that I was capable, resourceful, and resilient. If I could handle billion-dollar clients and high-stakes campaigns, I could handle uncovering whatever Lucas was hiding. And so, while Lucas believed I was his compliant wife, smiling, drinking my milk, falling into chemically induced slumber, I was actually building a case that would dismantle the entire web of lies he had spun. When I walked into my office every morning, no one knew the double life I was leading. To them, I was simply Ava Bennett, professional, polished, unstoppable. But behind that calm exterior, I was preparing to reveal the truth about Lucas Hale. And the night he pulled out that box beneath the baseboard, smiling to himself in the glow of his phone's flashlight, I knew my moment was coming. The night I saw Lucas open that hidden box, I realized something horrifying. He wasn't just lying to me, he was living an entirely different life. And worse, he was planning to erase mine. The betrayal ran so deep it made my chest ache. Every kiss, every whispered, "I love you," every glass of warm milk, it was all part of a performance. A routine carefully designed to keep me weak, compliant, and blind. But I wasn't blind anymore. The next morning, I looked across the breakfast table at the man I once believed was my safe place. He smiled, handing me another glass of milk, and I forced myself to take it with steady hands. "Thanks," I said softly, raising the mug to my lips. Inside, though, my stomach twisted. "Big day at work?" he asked casually, buttering toast like nothing had changed. "Yeah," I lied, smiling back. "Lots of meetings." He had no idea that while he sat there playing the role of devoted husband, Detective Rivera was already studying the footage of him rifling through my belongings, already piecing together the puzzle of his false identity. The betrayal became even clearer later that afternoon when Jenna called me. "Ava, you need to sit down for this." I ducked into an empty conference room at work, my heart thudding in my ears. "What did you find?" Her voice trembled. "Lucas Hale doesn't exist. At least, not before 7 years ago. The name, the social security number, it's all fabricated. And there's more. A woman named Elise Ward vanished from Miami 2 years ago. She was your age. Worked in marketing, looked eerily like you." My grip on the phone tightened. "You think he—" "I don't just think, Ava. Elise had a husband. Guess what his name was?" My blood ran cold. "Not Lucas. But the man in the photo attached to her marriage certificate? It's him." I could barely breathe. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systematic. Lucas wasn't just my husband. He had been someone else's husband too. Someone who had disappeared. That night, as Lucas walked through the door carrying takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, I almost broke. He set the bags on the counter, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thought you'd like a treat tonight." The smell of basil chicken turned my stomach. "Perfect," I whispered, forcing a smile. "You always know what I need." But as he hummed to himself, unpacking the cartons, I imagined Elise Ward sitting at a similar table in Miami, maybe smiling the way I just had, believing she was loved right before she vanished from the face of the earth. The betrayal of trust was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to claw at the mask he wore so perfectly. But I stayed silent, because if Elise's fate was any warning, confronting him too soon would mean disappearing myself. Instead, I played my role. I let him pour me another glass of milk, let him tuck me into bed, let him kiss my forehead like he always did. But this time, I wasn't the helpless wife he thought I was. I had Detective Rivera on speed dial. I had Jenna waiting in the shadows. And I had evidence, real evidence, that could shatter the lies Lucas had spun. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending I didn't know that every touch, every laugh, every goodnight sweetheart was a betrayal so deep it had cost other women their lives. Pretending I was still asleep while he planned my end. Lying beside him that night, listening to his even breathing, I whispered so quietly that only I could hear it. "I know who you are." It wasn't just anger anymore. It was resolve. Because bringing the betrayer back into the light wasn't just about saving myself. It was about justice, for Elise, for the others, and for the life Lucas thought he could erase without consequence. And if I had to smile, sip poisoned milk, and pretend to love him for a few more nights to make that happen, I would. I knew I couldn't survive another night simply pretending. I needed proof that no one could deny, something so damning that even Lucas's carefully built lies couldn't protect him. The recordings on my phone were a start, but I wanted more. I wanted to see how far he would go when he believed I was completely under his control. The plan began with something simple: fake surrender. That evening, I allowed Lucas to pour me another glass of warm milk, the honey swirling golden as he stirred. I smiled faintly, letting him see the exhaustion in my eyes. "You always take such good care of me," I whispered, letting my fingers brush his. He looked at me for a long moment, studying me with that calculating gaze that now chilled me to my bones, then kissed my forehead. "Sleep well tonight. You've been working too hard." I took the cup, tilted it against my lips, and let just enough touch my tongue to taste the bitterness, before tipping the rest slowly into the potted fern beside the couch while his back was turned. When I set the empty cup down on the coffee table, he gave me that satisfied smile again. "Good girl." The words echoed in my ears like a chain rattling around my throat. But I forced myself to play the part. I yawned, stretched, and made a show of trudging upstairs, as though the drug was already pulling me down into oblivion. My hands trembled as I pulled back the covers, phone already angled to capture the entire room. Tonight, I wasn't just pretending to sleep. Tonight, I was ready to watch a monster reveal himself. It didn't take long. Around midnight, the door creaked open and Lucas's silhouette filled the frame. He stood there for what felt like forever, whispering my name. "Ava, Ava." "Are you asleep?" His voice was soft, almost tender, but laced with something darker. When I didn't move, he approached, lifting my eyelid with a finger. I kept my body slack, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. Then, satisfied, he smiled. That smile. Cold, sharp, inhuman. He turned away and crouched near the baseboard. The camera caught everything, his hands prying at the trim, sliding the metal box free, flipping it open like a ritual. The passports, the photographs, the cash, the strange slips of paper with cryptographic phrases written neatly in block letters, all laid out across our bedroom floor like a twisted altar. But what froze me wasn't just the items. It was the notebook. He flipped to a page I hadn't seen before. Written in his tight, precise handwriting was a timeline. Asset transfer, Wednesday. Handover, Thursday, 6:40 a.m. Cleanup, Thursday morning. And beneath that, a single word scrawled in red ink. Final. My stomach lurched. Final, as in, final for me. I stayed still as Lucas pulled out his phone, dialing in that strange accent I'd heard before. "Everything is on schedule," he whispered. "Yes, I have the documentation. The accounts are secure. No, she doesn't suspect. She'll be gone by Thursday. No mistakes this time." He listened, nodding. "Understood. Miami was sloppy. Not again. Miami? Elise Ward." The room swam before my eyes, but I forced myself to stay limp, to keep breathing evenly, to let him believe he still had control, because I needed every second of footage, every word on that recording, to bring him down. Eventually, he placed everything back into the box, slid it behind the baseboard, and returned to bed. I felt the mattress dip as he lay beside me, heard the calm rhythm of his breathing, as though he hadn't just scheduled my death. I didn't sleep at all. The moment his breaths grew heavy with true slumber, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. The footage was there, every horrifying second of it. I copied it to a hidden drive, encrypted it, and sent a backup to Jenna with a single message. "He's planning something for Thursday." The next morning, Lucas kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. I watched his car roll out of the driveway, then sank into a chair, trembling with adrenaline and fear. For 6 years, I had believed in this man, and now he was nothing but a mask, a predator who had woven his lies so tightly around me I almost hadn't seen them. But I saw now. I called Jenna, my voice shaking. "He's planning to kill me on Thursday. I have it on video. She didn't waste time. Meet me in 30 minutes. And Ava, don't go back to that house alone again. We met at a diner on the outskirts of the city, where the clatter of dishes and hum of conversation covered our whispers. Jenna brought her laptop, already open to files she'd pulled on Lucas. His entire identity begins 7 years ago. No records before that, except for traces that don't add up. And this... She turned the screen toward me, showing a marriage certificate. Elise Ward, Miami, 5 years ago. Married a man with a different name, but it's him. Same face. Elise disappeared 2 years later. The betrayal was staggering, but the fear was sharper. If he did it before, he'll do it again. And he's planning to do it to you, Jenna said grimly. We need law enforcement now. Detective Rivera listened to everything without interrupting. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes hardened as he flipped through the evidence. The video, the timeline, the fake passports. This isn't just identity theft, he finally said. This is organized fraud and likely homicide. We'll need more to catch him in the act. But Ava, you need to understand, he's dangerous. If he suspects you know, he won't wait until Thursday. I nodded, my throat dry. Then I'll give him what he wants. I'll let him believe I'm still asleep. The plan was terrifying, but it was the only way. That evening, Lucas came home cheerful, humming as he cooked dinner, handing me another glass of milk. I forced myself to smile, to drink a little, to act drowsy. He watched me closely, eyes glinting. You're tired, sweetheart, he said softly. Why don't you head to bed early? I obeyed, my heart pounding. Behind the curtains outside, Detective Rivera's team was setting up surveillance. Jenna waited down the street, her phone ready. My bedroom became a stage, and I was the actress pretending to be unconscious while the predator revealed himself again. Around midnight, Lucas returned to the baseboard. He pulled out the box, spoke in that accent, confirmed the timeline. He whispered, "She'll never know what happened." But this time someone else knew. The police were listening, recording every word. I lay there, still and silent, while the betrayer tightened his own noose. The hardest part about living beside a predator is pretending you don't see his teeth. Every smile Lucas gave me, every soft kiss on the forehead, every glass of warm milk he set on the table, all of it was poison wrapped in affection. But I had learned to smile back, to sip just enough to keep him convinced, while secretly preparing to bring him down. After Detective Rivera reviewed my footage, the case against Lucas grew stronger. But the detective was clear. We need overwhelming evidence, not just suspicion, not just a video of him rifling through your purse. We need to catch him mid-crime, with tangible proof of intent. It terrified me, but I understood. If I wanted to be free, I had to keep playing his game. So I returned to the house each night like nothing had changed, brushing my teeth beside him, curling into bed while he scrolled through his phone, pretending I was the same trusting wife he had molded me into. The truth was, I had transformed. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a spy living in enemy territory. The first step was to expand the recordings. I bought a second phone under a fake name, a cheap prepaid device that wouldn't be tied to me. With Jenna's help, I hid it in the vent above our bed, angled down to capture the room from a different perspective. My original phone stayed on the dresser. 2 cameras, 2 angles. If one failed, the other would survive. The second step was to collect physical samples. The bitter taste in my milk wasn't enough on its own. I needed proof of the substance. So one night, instead of dumping the milk into the sink, I poured it carefully into a thermos I'd hidden in the pantry. The liquid glowed faintly in the kitchen light, golden from the honey, but laced with something sinister. I sealed it tight and tucked it into my bag. The next morning, Jenna handed it over to Detective Rivera, who rushed it to the lab. The results came back 2 days later, a controlled sedative, strong enough to knock out an adult within 30 minutes. It's not something you find over the counter, Rivera explained. Whoever supplied this to him has connections. This puts him in deeper than simple fraud. Every discovery pulled me further from the woman I had been. I wasn't just collecting evidence, I was holding my breath inside a nightmare, waiting for the moment it finally collapsed. And collapse it did, one night when Lucas grew careless. He had returned from work unusually late, his shirt wrinkled, his face drawn tight with frustration. He slammed his keys on the counter, muttering to himself in that sharp, accented voice I was beginning to recognize as his true one. I watched from the hallway, hidden by the shadows, as he pulled out his phone and spoke in rapid sentences I couldn't fully understand. But one phrase chilled me. She suspects nothing. I pressed record, my hand trembling. I caught every word, every inflection, every slip of the mask. Later, when he thought I was asleep, he opened the box again. This time, instead of pulling out the cash or the passports, he flipped through a file labeled with my name. Seeing it made bile rise in my throat. Inside were photocopies of my birth certificate, social security card, bank accounts, even work contracts. Pages and pages of my life reduced to data he planned to steal. He muttered as he worked, his words sharp. Transfer accounts Wednesday, dispose Thursday, flight Friday, no loose ends. I recorded it all. The next morning, when he kissed my cheek and left for the office, I collapsed on the kitchen floor, shaking from the weight of what I had witnessed. I wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. I was fighting to preserve my very existence, my name, my history, everything that made me Ava Bennett. Detective Rivera's team grew bolder after reviewing the files on me. This is enough for conspiracy and fraud charges, he said. But to lock him away for good, we need him to make the move. We need him to attempt the final step. So we prepared. Rivera set up hidden microphones in the walls, tiny devices disguised as outlets. Officers rotated in unmarked cars near my street, ready to move the second he crossed the line. Jenna checked on me daily, sometimes just by walking the dog past my house, slipping me a look of encouragement when our eyes met. But inside, I was unraveling. Every night beside Lucas was torture. I would lie stiff under the blankets, feeling the mattress shift as he climbed in, smelling the faint trace of cologne mixed with the chemical bitterness of whatever he had handled. My pulse thundered, my mind screaming, "He's going to kill you. Any night now. He could change the plan and kill you." And yet I stayed. Because leaving without proof would mean he vanished into another city, another name, another woman's life. I clung to one thought. If Elise Ward had someone watching her back, maybe she'd still be alive. Gathering evidence wasn't just for me. It was for her and for every other woman whose photo I'd seen in that cursed box. One evening, I tested his control. When he handed me the milk, I pretended to resist, laughing lightly. "You don't have to spoil me every night. I'm fine without it." His reaction was instantaneous. His jaw tightened, his smile didn't reach his eyes. "No," he said firmly, sliding the mug closer. "You need it. It helps you rest." I forced a giggle, raising the cup obediently, but inside the confirmation roared through me. He wasn't just offering, it was an order, a demand, proof of intent to drug me. I recorded that too. The evidence piled up. The sedative in my milk, the recordings of his phone calls, the files with my name, the timeline he muttered to himself, the orders disguised as affection. Piece by piece, I was building a cage he couldn't escape from. But evidence alone wasn't enough. Lucas was clever, slippery, practiced. Rivera warned me. The moment he senses you know he'll accelerate, that's when he's most dangerous. So I smiled wider, kissed him back more warmly, laughed at his jokes. I let him believe he was still winning, even as I wired my own house against him. By the end of the week, the box behind the baseboard was no longer just his secret. It was mine too. And soon, it would become the evidence that stripped away his mask forever. By the time Friday approached, I wasn't just a frightened wife anymore. I was a strategist living behind enemy lines, and every move I made was part of a larger plan. The evidence was in place, the surveillance team ready, But Detective Rivera warned me, "We can't arrest him until he makes a direct move. We need him to incriminate himself in real time." That meant I had to stay close. I had to let Lucas believe he was still in control. And in a way, I understood. It was the only way to make sure he could never hurt another woman again. But the thought of lying down next to him, smiling as he tucked me into bed, was almost unbearable. So I began to build my own retaliation. Not rage-filled, not reckless, but deliberate. For weeks he had choreographed my every move with drugs and lies. Now I would choreograph his downfall. The plan started with the glass of milk. I knew it was his ritual, the anchor of his control. Every night he needed me to drink, to surrender, to drift into oblivion so he could do his work in silence. That night I let him believe nothing had changed. When he handed me the mug, I smiled sweetly and asked, "Extra, honey?" He obliged, stirring it in with a flourish like he always did, and I raised the glass to my lips. But what he didn't know was that I had already prepared my own drink earlier, plain milk with just honey. As soon as his back turned, I switched the mugs. The one he had poisoned went into the sink, carefully rinsed but not drained. The residue would go straight to Rivera's evidence team later. I took a long sip of the safe glass, smiling at him as though nothing was wrong. "Good girl," he murmured, satisfied again. The words still made me flinch inside, but now, instead of breaking me, they fueled me. Every condescending phrase, every lie, every drop of drug he thought I swallowed became ammunition. My retaliation wasn't about screaming at him or demanding answers. It was about control, taking back what he had stolen from me. That night, when he whispered my name and tested my eyelids, I kept still. But under the blankets, I tapped 3 times against the mattress, the prearranged signal to Rivera's team listening in through the bugs. It meant, he's active, he's moving. The sound of him pulling out the baseboard and the scrape of the metal box were now familiar. But this time, I wasn't just a witness. I was bait. I had wired myself with a microphone, hidden in the lace trim of my camisole. And every word he muttered was being transmitted live to the officers parked outside. "Thursday morning," he whispered. "Final cleanup. No loose ends." I wanted to leap from the bed, to tear the notebook from his hands, to scream that I wasn't just another name on his list. But I stayed still. Retaliation is patience sharpened into a blade. The next morning, I enacted the second step of my plan. While Lucas was in the shower, I slipped into his office and found his laptop open. Normally, I wouldn't dare touch it, but I knew this might be my only chance. My fingers trembled as I plugged in a tiny drive Jenna had given me. It copied his files in under 2 minutes, encrypted emails, financial transfers, lists of names. When the progress bar hit 100%, I yanked it free and tucked it into my bra. By the time he stepped out of the bathroom, I was back at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Everything okay?" he asked, towel slung casually around his shoulders. "Of course," I said, smiling. "Just work stuff." He kissed my cheek, none the wiser. Later that day, Rivera confirmed what I had hoped. The drive is gold. Offshore accounts, connections to other identities, transfers linked to at least 3 missing women. This isn't just a scammer, Ava. This is a predator with a network. We've been chasing someone like him for years. Hearing that both terrified and strengthened me. Lucas wasn't just my betrayer, he was many women's betrayer. My retaliation, if successful, wouldn't just save me. It would end his entire operation, but the most dangerous part of the plan was still ahead. Rivera wanted me to confront him, openly, directly, while the team listened. They needed him to admit his crimes, to reveal himself without the mask. It meant looking him in the eye and forcing him to say out loud what he had been hiding. The thought made my blood run cold. Yet, I agreed, because nothing else would guarantee he never walked free again. That evening, Lucas came home carrying flowers. It almost made me laugh. His idea of romance right before he planned to kill me. He set them on the counter, kissed me warmly, and asked, "How's my beautiful wife?" I looked into his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt steel. I know about the milk, I said softly. His smile faltered just for a fraction of a second. Then it returned, smoother than glass. What do you mean? The bitter taste, the way I've been sleeping too deeply. I know you've been drugging me, Lucas. Silence fell between us like a blade. He set the grocery bag down slowly, his eyes narrowing. You've been under a lot of stress, Ava. Maybe you should. I also know about the passports, I interrupted. My voice was calm, steady, even though my hands shook under the table. The cash, the photographs of women who looked just like me. Elise Ward from Miami. His face changed then. The mask dropped, the warmth evaporated. What stared back at me wasn't my husband. It was a predator cornered. You don't know what you're talking about, he said coldly. Then explain it, I shot back. Explain why you've been preparing to disappear with my life. Explain why there's a notebook in the wall that says, "Final cleanup, Thursday morning." His jaw clenched. He took a step closer. For the first time, I saw his true expression. Calculated. Ruthless, stripped of charm. And while I met his gaze without flinching, Rivera's team listened to every word through the microphone hidden in my camisole. This was retaliation. Not just surviving, not just hiding, but forcing the betrayer into the light and letting him choke on his own confession. The moment I said Elise Ward's name, something snapped in Lucas's eyes. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't pretending. The man who stood in front of me was a stranger, hard, cold, and utterly dangerous. For 6 years, he had played the role of loving husband, and now the mask had shattered. You shouldn't have said that, he whispered, his voice stripped of warmth. His accent bled through fully this time, Eastern European, sharp as broken glass. He stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the kitchen tile. You've seen too much. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to keep my gaze steady. Somewhere outside, Detective Rivera's team was listening, waiting. I only needed to keep him talking. Tell me then, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Tell me who you really are. Lucas's lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. I'm someone who takes what he wants. Women like you build lives, careers, identities, and I take them. Your money, your history, your future. Then I disappear, and no one remembers you anymore. Every word dripped into the microphone sewn into my camisole, transmitted straight to the officers hidden nearby. Rivera had been right. The climax couldn't happen in the shadows. It had to be public, undeniable. I took a step back toward the dining table, pretending to tremble. How many women? I asked. Enough, he said flatly. Enough to live well. Enough to retire after you. The blood drained from my face, but I didn't look away. His confession was everything Rivera needed. Still, Lucas moved closer, his hand sliding into his pocket. That was the signal. Through the silence, a voice boomed from hidden speakers around the house. Lucas Hale, or whatever your real name is, this is the Austin Police Department. Step away from Ava Bennett and put your hands where we can see them. The house is surrounded. Lucas froze. For one terrible second, his eyes darted between me and the door, calculating. Then he hissed, "You set me up." I forced myself to stand taller. No, Lucas. I protected myself. Something Elise never had the chance to do. The front door burst open with a crash, and Detective Rivera stormed in, gun raised, flanked by 3 officers in tactical gear. "Hands up, now!" Lucas raised his hand slowly, but the smirk returned to his face. "You have nothing," he said. "I'm her husband. We were having a fight, that's all." But Rivera shook his head. "We have everything. The poisoned milk, the sedative results, the fake passports, the notebook. And thanks to the wire, we just heard you confess to multiple murders." Lucas's composure cracked. He lunged toward the back door, but another officer was already there blocking his path. He spun toward the stairs, but Rivera tackled him before he could take 2 steps. The thud of his body hitting the floor echoed through the house. "Let me go!" he shouted, his real accent spilling out, guttural and raw. "You don't know who I work for." "You don't understand." Rivera pinned him down as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. "We understand perfectly. You're a predator who thought he was smarter than everyone else, but you're not. You're just caught." Even as they dragged him up, Lucas turned his head toward me, hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over, Ava. People like me, we have friends, resources. You'll never be safe." I met his gaze one last time, steady and unflinching. "You're wrong. I'm safer than I've ever been." The officers hauled him out into the night, their radios crackling, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt different. The shadows lifted. The silence was no longer a threat. The climax wasn't just about his arrest. It was about exposure. His lies dragged into the light, his power stripped away, his voice recorded for the world to hear. For years, he had hidden behind false names, stolen lives, and poisoned drinks. But now, the whole world would know him for what he truly was. And as I stood in that kitchen, shaking but alive, I realized something else. The man I had married was gone the moment he showed his teeth. What stood before me in handcuffs wasn't a husband, it was a criminal. The hours after Lucas's arrest blurred together in fragments, police lights flashing outside my house, officers carrying out the metal box from behind the baseboard, Detective Rivera's calm voice walking me through my statement as though I wasn't shaking uncontrollably. I remember Jenna's hand gripping mine so tightly my knuckles went white, grounding me when everything else felt unreal. The evidence was overwhelming. The poisoned milk tested positive for a sedative so strong it could have killed me if the dose was just slightly higher. The fake passports linked to multiple identities across different states. The notebook detailed not only my timeline, but also the names of women who had vanished in Miami, Phoenix, and Denver. It was no longer just suspicion. It was a pattern. The trial came quickly, faster than I expected. Federal charges were stacked one after another: identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. When the prosecutors revealed his real name, Victor Petrov, I felt like I had been punched in the chest. Lucas Hale had never existed. The man I had loved for 6 years was a fabrication from the start. In court, I sat only a few feet away from him. He wore a crisp suit, but the mask was gone. His eyes were dead, his smirk replaced by something hollow. The jury heard the recordings of his late-night phone calls, saw the photographs of women who looked like me, and read the notes he had written about final cleanup. The moment the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, I finally let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. Victor was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The weight of those words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't joy I felt, not even relief at first. It was grief. Grief for the 6 years I had wasted, for the love that had never been real, for the part of myself I had given to a ghost. But as time passed, grief shifted into resolve. I sold the house, moved to Santa Barbara, and built a new life. I went to therapy, learned how to sleep without fear, and slowly reclaimed the small things, like enjoying a glass of warm milk at night without wondering what was hidden inside. The consequences weren't just his, they were mine too. My life had changed forever, scarred by betrayal, but also reshaped by survival. And though I carried the weight of what he had done, I also carried the knowledge that I had stopped him, that there would be no more final cleanups, no more women erased by his lies. Even now, years later, there are nights when I wake up in the dark, listening for the sound of wood scraping against wood, waiting to see a man crouched at the baseboard. But the house is quiet. The floorboards stay in place. And the only person in my bed is me. Victor Petrov, the man I once called Lucas Hale, spends his life behind bars. The world knows him as a predator, a fraud, a murderer. I know him as the man who tried to erase me. But I am still here. I built a new life, new routines, and new strength out of the ashes he left behind. And yet, sometimes I wonder. In his final words to me, he promised that people like him had friends, resources. Was it an empty threat or a warning of shadows still lurking beyond prison walls? I don't know. Maybe I never will, but I do know this. I am not afraid anymore. Whatever comes, I will face it with open eyes, steady hands, and a voice that cannot be silenced. If you want to hear more stories that peel back the mask of betrayal and survival, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.